everybody and welcome to Review Reviews, back with another Hong Kong content review, diving back into the world of Shaw Brothers horror during the the early 80s with two more entries of their library. We have Hell Has No Bounds and we have A Seeding of a Ghost, which has infamous status in terms of the subject matter and the content that happens during the end of that film. I can see why now, absolutely. As usual, same with the last entry that I did. We're talking about these two movies, my thoughts and opinions of them. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive into some cool black magic horror-based content. Let's go. As mentioned, both films are directed by the same director, and he did these films practically back to back. This is 1992 and the first is 1993, so both films were filmed quite closely. I haven't seen of his films, granted. I know he did a few other horror movies, but these are the two that are the most significant and the ones that people recognise his name for. First movie I want to talk about, which is my least favourite out of the two, which is Hell Has No Bounds, released in 1992. This film is just kind of disappointing, really. Ultimately, it's very hard for them to track down, very difficult. It's not got a really easy access at all. I think there's an out-of-print DVD, it's not on Blu-ray. It might be part of potentially a future box set, or it wouldn't surprise me paying on one of those editions. And unfortunately, this film is just okay. It's just not really that impressive. Ultimately, it's kind of got some good ideas, but it doesn't really know how to use them, and when it gets creative, it's kind of too little too late kind of thing. And this is an hour and a half movie, and it kind of meanders a lot, and it's kind of feels sort of, just lackluster. It kind of feels just kind of uninspired. It kind of I'll just film this kind of thing, compared to the last director that I talked about with the Killer Constable and his movies Box of Omen, Bewitched, Hex. That felt like a director who was taking charge of those movies. Despite the content, despite the storyline, he was making the best movie he can with the material he had, with the budget he had. This film, similar to the other one as well, but I'll get to that in a minute. This one feels just a lot more cheaper. Just feels a lot more set by set kind of thing, location by location. There is some cool, unique ideas in it. It's not a terrible film completely. It's just kind of disappointing for the ideas that it could have gone with. It could have really rolled with it. Because essentially the film follows a woman, goes on a camping trip with her boyfriend, go to this kind of site, and she gets basically possessed by a demon. This kind of little girl that was wronged in her past life, and she's taken over the body of this police woman. Now it starts to affect this woman, it starts to change her behaviour, her attitude, she starts to become a bit more violent, less kind of emotion filled, she's a lot more driven. It kind of works for the good portion of it in terms of the idea of, she's open for promotion, and there's a scene where basically they're taking on a sex maniac kind of thing, rapist, and she basically straight up shoots this person in the head, and the demons kind of influencing her and kind of taking control and helping her along. So it's kind of interesting at the start. You kind of like, okay, she's gonna, she's a shy kind of woman who's kind of got this kind of change of attitude, and the demon's kind of using her, and she's taking advantage of kind of like the situation that she's in, and she's kind of manipulating a lot of people and creating hallucinations, and she's like, causing people to basically end up killing themselves, or see things that aren't really there kind of thing, or end up being killed in the process of kind of these hallucinations that do happen. And it kind of, the first 15 minutes of the film is essentially a kind of weaker version of Carrie. That's the best way to say it, in a sense. It's, there's a lot of low stake kind of deaths, low stake kind of kills. There's an elevator shaft death with two women. It's alright. There's a really cool scene with this kind of medium who is kind of like a confrontation kind of thing, almost like almost like Italian horror, kind of a Argento type thing it's kind of going for, with the colour schemes and some of the creative kind of outlet the film tries to go for. You can definitely tell there's some influence over other horror movies and other genres all this time. You can tell that they're basically trying to cherry picking some of the best ideas. It doesn't always quite work. Some of the characters are just not really that engaging. There's a really hilarious moment where they try and reveal some of the twists and turns that do happen towards the later half of the film, end of Act 2, leading into Act 3, it starts to kind of change up in gears a little bit in terms of story, in terms of some of the reveals and why everything's happening. To mention the characters just being kind of boring and just kind of not really that engaging, and it's kind of really sleazy as well. It's kind of doesn't, but even that, it doesn't really kind of go for it in the sense. It's just kind of okay. I mean, again, there's a really kind of piss poor kind of death sequence involving toilet paper. I'm going to show you a clip here. Yep, that's an actual scene for the film, and yeah, it's just kind of, what? How did the person die from that? It's like toilet paper, just open your arms. I don't get it. It goes from like a poor version of Carrie to kind of untold story, the kind of like this kind of really kind of exploitative kind of background into kind of Japanese war, and how the little girl kind of demon ghost was kind of wronged, and it goes really kind of hardcore a little bit in terms of that kind of untold story kind of aspects. I won't reveal too much, but it's pretty like woof kind of thing. It kind of just changes kind of tone quite drastically, going from kind of more of a sleazier film to a kind of a more of a hard-hitting kind of cannibal movie in a weird way, and then goes to a little bit of Insidious, which that's pretty cool in terms of this kind of ghost dimension kind of thing. I think, oh, but okay, this film's starting to pick up its kind of pace now kind of thing. It's this kind of demon, this is kind of defending itself. You know, we've established who it is, why it's doing it. There's a kind of a knife, which looks cheap as hell, but whatever. This kind of medium's presented the kind of one of our main characters, and we have to kind of exorcise the demon literally by stabbing it multiple times in the chest. It's pretty cool. There's some cool bits here and there. The person who's possessed May, you know, in that sequence when you get this kind of really cool ghost fog kind of Insidious kind of dimension kind of thing, she's kind of messing with them and saying like, you know, come here, and she's kind of messing around, teleporting back and forth. That's pretty cool. That's when it's really creative. It gets kind of bonkers towards the end as well when the police sergeant goes full on like, I'm gonna, you know, do a seance and then burn this person to the ground. It's great, but it comes so little, so late into the film, and it doesn't quite work overall. The kind of the tone and how these scenes are good intention, and it's pretty cool, but it doesn't ultimately work with the flow of the film. And by the end, when you get to it, you just don't care. You're not invested. The end of the film, when the conclusion of the film, the end of the film, I had zero fucks to give. It ultimately ends as a pointless movie by the end, and nothing's achieved, nothing's established. Ultimately, in terms of the moral lesson, or kind of like someone kind of surviving this, it just kind of ends on a really bitter taste in your mouth. Overall, Hell Has No Bounds is just kind of a disappointing movie, as mentioned. It has some good ideas, but ultimately doesn't really pay off on them. When you just have a creative outlet during the kind of the third act of the film, it's kind of a little too late. It kind of should have come way earlier. If it would have just focused a little bit harder on some of those characters, made the investment, made the journey between boyfriend and girlfriend a bit more interesting, how those reveals would hit a little bit harder, it could have been a very interesting film. It could have been a definite contender, and I'm surprised the film's got quite a positive reception. I'm surprised people like this film to the degree that people are liking it. Maybe it might get a kind of a Blu-ray release down the line, but it's definitely not one for me, not one I would revisit. Bit of a shame overall. And second and last film for this review is Seeding of a Ghost, released in 1993 on the same director. This is a 1 year after he did Hell Has No Bounds, and this is better, I would say, question mark. If you told me if I like this film, I don't know my answer. That's the best way to say it. I kind of appreciate it in a lot of aspects. I like the fact it just goes for it, goes completely bonkers. When I think of black magic Shaw Brothers films, the kind of the stereotypes of those types of films, as mentioned in my previous video, this is the type of film I'm thinking of. This is what I think of most of those films being. Now, the difference is in terms of my taste, in terms of like horror movies and like what Shaw Brothers movies are. The reason why I liked Boxer's Omen and obviously like, you know, Bewitched and that kind of stuff is because it focuses more on the rules. It has creativity in terms of cinematography, it has character scenarios that I'm invested in, the scenarios I want to see pay off, and when I'm having sorcerer versus sorcerer, that's awesome, that's great, and it's establishing the rules, establishing what the magic is and the levels you need to go to, gaining power. That's more wacky, more fun, kind of just crazy go for it, kind of horror-based kind of movie. Even some of the more sleazier aspects in it and gross stuff in it pays off and adds to the charm of it. That's my type of stuff. This one gets pretty close, but it is really goddamn cheesy and really goddamn sleazy. It has full-on fraud nudity, it has a lot of sex sequences, and it goes on for quite some time. Granted, Is that a bad thing? I don't know, but at the same time, it's kind of just awkward after a while. It doesn't really. It's just kind of there for the sleaze factor, there for the kind of the grindhouse kind of feel towards it. It feels like, yeah, we need to put this in there to kind of show how hardcore we are. And, this is meant to be originally Blackmagic 3, which no fucking surprise there, because Blackmagic 1 was very sleazy and it was very much a 70s film. I haven't seen number 2, granted, I'm not too sure, but this definitely feels like a Blackmagic type of entry. I'm surprised they changed it to title, but this feels a lot more creative than I expected it would be, considering the storyline and seeing where the film goes. Essentially, the film follows a couple, basically a man and wife that basically are having an affair. The film kind of goes back and forth between them two quite a bit towards the start of the film. It kind of establishes these characters, the dynamic. That's pretty good. Actually, the film allows to take its time to get to know these characters and the scenario that this eventually take place towards the kind of second act of the film. So you've established the husbands, you've established the wife, you've established the partners, and you've established there is black magic kind of voodoo guy kind of in the mountains. That's pretty cool. So you're establishing some set rules and some basically scenarios that are taking place, and basically an altercation happens where she kind of runs off because she wants the kind of cheating husband to have a divorce, and she kind of storms off and she gets basically assaulted and raped and killed by these two men that basically have been sort of following her throughout the night. Basically, the wife is found dead. The husband is in grief and he's horrified and angry about it. Discovering these kind of people might be involved, the cheating husband and the two kind of, scumbags essentially that did rape and kill her. And one thing I will say straight away is that motivation in this film is, and logic, completely goes out the goddamn window. No one in this film has great motivation. No one has any great logic. Considering the two kind of scumbag characters, the rapists, basically say, the husband might have sinned us, so I guess we should kill him, yeah, okay. And then have the beers. It's like, what? Morons. But anyway, he basically gets really desperate and starts to basically go, okay, I'm tempted by the black magic arts, and he wants to hire the services of this kind of voodoo guy who basically is taking the body from the grave and basically bring back my wife to get revenge on the people that wronged her. And you get this really cool practical kind of skeleton, it moves kind of thing, eyes. It's pretty cool. It's like there's some good effort and there's some really good effort placed in there. And one of the things I do appreciate about this film a little bit more than I expected it would is that the fact that again it takes its time to really establish everyone's point of view, establishing the kind of how long it takes actually to bring back someone from the dead, because the whole crafting of the black magic stuff is pretty awesome. It actually takes a lot of effort by the kind of the sorcerer guy, and then you introduce the kind of the Buddhist monks, which is great, which is something I really appreciated. Within kind of Bewitched and kind of Boxer's Omen, they're kind of doing their practice as well in terms of their rituals and the kind of the charm sword. And there's a really cool, again, back and forth sequence that draws the second act of the film where the kind of wife of the cheating husband is possessed and they're trying to get rid of the kind of the demon outside of it. They're trying to exorcise that, and the Buddhist monks are outside, they're doing their kind of rituals, and it's pretty goddamn awesome. And the sorcery guy's doing his stuff, and it's really intense back and forth because they're both trying to match each other's power, and you feel the intensity, you feel like the kind of craziness of the back and forth of it. It's really awesome. That stuff is something I really do appreciate, something I do really like. So that's pretty cool. The practical effect nature of it is also great, and the very weird kind of infamous kind of sex scene between like this kind of corpse and animated kind of spirit, I'd say. It's not particularly like memorizable. It's just kind of weird. It's just kind of like wacky, but it goes for it, and I appreciate that. Not to mention the film goes completely batshit crazy with the almost John Carpenter The Thing level of practical effect. And that portion of the film is completely surprising. I did not expect that to happen with the kind of the seed of the ghost, as the title mentioned, the actual crafty black magic ritual. It's called Seeding of a Ghost, and we're getting a really nasty demon baby, and it's pretty goddamn awesome, and it's pretty horrible and horrific and violent, and it's just awesome to see on screen. It's not great in how it's handled, but it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of blood, it's just kind of awesome to watch. It's like something that I was not expecting, turning left field. Considering how many characters do die in the film, the moral of the story is very much like basically everyone gets punished one way or the other kind of thing, essentially, and there's not particularly a happy ending necessarily. It's kind of just left in a kind of question mark. Ultimately, Seeding of a Ghost is a full-on 80s exploitation film. It is a very sleazy, very much has all the tick boxes of a type of early 80s kind of horror movie with full frontal nudity, extreme violence, practical effects. It has bonkers concepts. Surprisingly, allows the film to have moments of character build up. It actually has stakes in the film. It actually has a moral lesson about kind of like messing with black magic and messing with things that are out of your control, and the ideas of affairs kind of thing, and consequences for your actions. All the characters have a sense of consequence, and you know, as I mentioned before, everyone's kind of logic and motivation is so out the goddamn window. It's kind of nice the film acknowledges that and actually punishes characters that are messing with these types of things, and the fact that the kind of the scumbag characters do get their comeuppance. Even the husband that had been warned multiple times by this kind of black magic voodoo guy, saying there are consequences by bringing back your wife, by getting revenge, by creating something so purely evil and, you know, destructive that it does consume him. And it's pretty interesting how they approach that, and the fact that there's different points of views. I like the fact as well we have the really cool kind of Buddhist point of view as well with the sorcery stuff. The fact that even the scumbag characters even go to a medium as well and trying to find out what's going on, and it's like this really powerful kind of nasty force is seeking back them too as well. So I like the fact that it has good build up, it actually has clear kind of placement in terms of where each character is, in terms of their mindset, what they're doing. That stuff I really like. Whether I like the film ultimately, whether I would watch it again, I don't know. I like it, but I kind of don't. Would I watch it again? Probably not. I do have some more horror content coming soon for you guys, so stay tuned for that. So in the meantime, guys, I'm for reviews. Peace. Signing out.